At school. Now, Kevin was sitting on a table in the school library, alone, reading a book titled Vampire Black. Notes. His eyes were too focused on looking at the book, until he didn't realize there was a teenage boy sitting next to him. The teenager, Layden. Hey, Layden greeted. Kevin was a little surprised, hearing Layden's voice so close to his eardrums. Kevin turned, staring sharply at Layden. What are you doing? Layden asked. Kevin was silent. He didn't intend to respond to Layden's question. He was back focused on reading the book he was holding. Layden, feeling ignored, tilted his head to look at the book Kevin was reading. Vampire? Layden said. Kevin was still silent. Do you like fantasy stories? Layden asked again. Aren't we friends now? I'm your friend, but that's according to your own assumption. But to me, you're still a stranger who suddenly appeared in my life. Kevin said sharply. Didn't we become friends? You said that at the clinic. Really? Sorry, I forgot. Layden sighed softly. Even though Kevin was willing to respond to the question, Kevin still didn't look back at him while he was talking. Did I make a mistake? No, Kevin answered briefly. Sorry, Layden said softly, instantly making Kevin turn to him. Sorry. What are you apologizing for? Yesterday, I felt that we were very close. But why did you suddenly ignore me again? Kevin was silent. Just tell me what I did wrong. Sorry, Kevin said. I didn't mean to make you misunderstand like this. Okay, just say what you want to say. Ma'am teacher asked me to be in a group with you. You don't have a partner? Okay. Do you want to do group work with me? Kevin nodded slowly. What's my task? Can I go to your house to do group work with you? Kevin was silent for a moment. Can't we do it separately? No. When do you want to go to my house? After school, Layden replied. That soon. Layden nodded. Okay. Can I have your phone number? You have a phone? No. But I can call you on my dad's phone. Wait a minute, Layden said. Then Layden took his phone out of his pants pocket. He wrote down his phone number on a small piece of paper, then handed it to Kevin. Kevin took the paper. He put it in his shirt pocket, then continued reading the book he was holding. He ignored Layden again. Do you believe in the existence of vampires in the real world? Layden said. Kevin was silent, lost in thought after hearing Layden's question. 10 years ago, there was a lot of news spreading about the death. Someone, you know that news? They died after their hearts and blood were taken by that murderer. I know, Gulf said. I don't want to hear that news anymore. Besides, that news has disappeared without a trace for almost 10 years. Even the killer hasn't been found yet. Sorry, it's okay. Silence. Gulf went back to reading his book, while Layden kept staring at Gulf, who was busy reading. I remember, Gulf said suddenly. Remember? Why did you hurt Reno? Gulf asked. Layden was silent for a moment, taking a soft breath. Because I want to hurt him. Gulf widened his eyes. What do you mean? So, you'll act as you please without thinking about others who will be victims of your actions. Layden chuckled softly. Besides, it's also even. He hurt your knee and I retaliated by breaking his hand. Gulf shook his head slowly. That's not how you repay someone's evil. Then, just let him bring you down or be mean to you. Besides, if he's tired, eventually, he'll get bored on his own. Usually, people like that are people who lack love from their parents or loved ones. Layden was stunned to hear Kevin's answer. Cool. Huh, cool? Gulf asked, confused. How can you think like that? My father taught me how to respond to someone, because since I was little, I've never had a long conversation with anyone else besides my father. Gulf answered. Do you want to hear my story? Story about? My parents, Layden replied. Is it okay if I know about your parents' problem? No. Besides, I'm comfortable telling you. Okay, I'm ready to be your listener. Gulf replied, "It's true what you said earlier. A teenager who lacks love will definitely act cruelly like me." Gulf was silent, still listening to Layden's story, staring intently at Layden's eyes with respect. "Since I was little, I've never seen my father pamper me. Even I often get bruises from my father's punches. Until I was 8 years old, I ran away. I took my mother with me ... You know, at that time, I was really scared. Scared if I couldn't take care of my mother. But luckily there was someone who was willing to take care of me and also my mother." "Why did your father act like that to you?" "He cared more about his own lover than my mother. His own wife. He's a bastard. I really hated him so much." Layden replied, "You're not planning to take revenge on your dad, are you?" Layden clicked his tongue. Revenge. If I could, I would do it, but I can't." "Why not?" "That slut dared to steal your father from your own mother." Layden chuckled when he heard Kevin's words. "Woman. Unfortunately, that woman is really innocent. I can't be mean to someone who doesn't have a problem with me. I also know that it's not that woman's fault. Besides, from the beginning, that bastard had planned it from the beginning. Your mom must be a great person. I just pray for the best for you and also your mom." "Thank you, Kevin. Sometime, would you like to meet my mom?" Sure. Later I'll ask my father first." Layden smiled thinly. You're lucky. You're lucky to have a father as good as your father." "True. I'm also very grateful for that. That's why I always want to protect my father from people who want to do bad things to him." Kevin replied, "I want to buy a drink. Do you want to order anything?" "No need," Kevin replied. Layden chuckled. "Does your father also forbid you to buy food here?" "It's not my father." "Then is it your father's lover?" Kevin was silent. He nodded slowly to answer Layden's question. "Okay, wait for me a while. I want to buy a drink." "Yes." After that, Layden left the library to buy drinks at the canteen, while Kevin, he was still sitting on the chair, waiting for Layden's arrival. Still in the office, Jongchev Eve Company, owned by Mew Suppasit Jongchev Eve. Now Arson, Dylan, and Du were sitting relaxed on the sofa in Mew's room, while Mew, who was sitting in his office chair, staring intently at the laptop in front of him. "Mew," Du called, a little hurried. Mew turned to him. "I found him." Mew got up from his seat to go to Du. "I found Aliovek's location along with Alacia. They live in the same place," Du said. "Send me the address," Mew replied. Then he sat back down in his office chair. Du immediately carried out Mew's orders. After finishing sending Aliovek's address, Du refocused his gaze. Laptop. "I want to go to the bathroom for a while," Dylan said. Then Dylan hurriedly left Mew's room. Mew stared intently at Dylan's departure. A few minutes later, he refocused on his laptop. Kevin was still waiting for Layden's arrival. Suddenly a security guard approached him. He greeted Kevin and gave Kevin a letter. He said it was from a man who often sent letters to Kevin. Kevin took the letter. Then he let the security guard go after giving him the letter. After making sure there was no one near him, Kevin opened the letter, showing a written text about your friend. "Layden, don't bring him into your house. He's not a normal human. If you bring Layden home to your house, it's very dangerous for your father's safety. I warn you, once again, don't bring Layden home, or your father will be in danger." Kevin clicked his tongue. While chuckling softly after reading the contents of the letter, he rolled his eyes in reply. He clenched the paper to vent his annoyance. "Damn, you think I can be fooled by your words?" Kevin muttered, until a few minutes later. Suddenly Layden came. He sat in front of Kevin carrying food and drinks. Instantly, Kevin immediately hid the clenched paper in his hand. "You're here," Kevin said, still a little nervous. Why? Isn't it against the rules to bring food?" or drinks from the canteen inside the library? Layden smiled thinly. Because of that. Keep quiet, so that no one knows that I broke the school rules. Kevin shook his head. Don't break the school rules too often. Not good for you or your future. Yes, I understand. I won't do it again, Layden replied. After that, Kevin packed the books he brought. I'm going back to class. Come, Layden said, after getting up from his seat. Not responding to Layden's words, Kevin just smiled thinly, then left the room, followed by Layden. He's received my letter. Inside the bathroom, Dylan could be heard talking on the phone with someone. He tore up my paper. What do you mean? Okay, keep an eye on him. Don't let him escape from our plan. After finishing talking on the phone, Dylan took a deep breath. Then, Dylan slammed his own phone, venting his annoyance. His face looked distraught after ending the phone call earlier. Damn. Why did this happen? He muttered, while holding his head. He paced back and forth, his panic increasing. Dylan crossed his arms, while biting his fingernails. Still walking, he paced back and forth until finally, Dylan adjusted his breath to get ready to leave the bathroom. Dylan had not yet walked out of the bathroom, but Dylan stopped in his tracks when he saw a man who was now sitting on the sink, arms crossed, staring at Dylan very intently. Mew, what are you doing here? Dylan said, slightly masking his panic. It was true. The man who kept staring intently at Dylan was none other than Mew. Not responding to Dylan's question, Mew smiled thinly, still staring intently at Dylan. Since when have you been here? Why? Mew said sarcastically. Are you afraid I'll hear your conversation? Dylan became more nervous. Conversation? What do you mean? Mew spat on the ground when he heard Dylan's answer. Then he walked towards Dylan until he arrived right beside Dylan's ear. Mew whispered, You know, I don't like to share my favorite humans with other humans. Even if he's not human, I won't let someone else have him. He rejected me. I'll make sure he never gets married for the rest of his life as revenge for daring to reject me. Remember that, if even one person dares to touch him without my permission, I will not hesitate to tear apart. What do you mean? I don't understand at all, Dylan said after pushing Mew's body until he was a few meters away from his ear. Mew smiled thinly, walking towards Dylan again, until he was right in front of Dylan. Mew patted Dylan's shoulder a little roughly. Don't try to play behind my back. Don't hide behind people who hate me. Then I'll forgive you. I'm warning you, if you dare involve the person I've made my queen, my own hands will make your body crumble like shards of glass from your phone. I'm not kidding with my words. Come back and be my friend, or your family will never find your corpse. He sat behind the pat on Dylan's shoulder. For some reason, after hearing Mew's words that sounded so very relaxed but making his body look very stiff, even now his eyes couldn't blink. He kept staring forward, not daring to look back at Mew. His shoulder also felt very sore from Mew's hand pats, which seemed full of anger. Mew chuckled contentedly at Dylan's expression, which looked like he was holding back his bowel movement. A few minutes later, Mew left Dylan alone in the bathroom with Dylan's heart still beating fast. When he realized Bright was gone, Dylan immediately collapsed weakly, taking a deep breath while patting his own chest, which felt very stuffy. Dylan's breath could be heard gasping. His legs still felt stiff, as if Dylan couldn't stand. Until a few minutes later, Du came. He went to Dylan, then helped Dylan to stand. Are you okay? Du asked, still looking relaxed. Dylan was silent. He just stared blankly at Du. Without getting an answer from Dylan, Du immediately helped Dylan walk out of the bathroom until he reached Du's office. Du sat Dylan down on the sofa in his room. Then Du got a drink for Dylan. Dylan drank the beverage. Still feeling congested? Du asked, gently patting Dylan's back. Dylan shook his head. What are you actually trying to do? Why are you causing trouble again? You already know that Mew won't forgive you if you involve golf in your plans, Du said frankly. Dylan stared at Du blankly, still silent, not answering Du's question. I like golf, Dylan replied. Du's eyes widened instantly, surprised to hear Dylan's words. You yourself know that Mew has been playing around with golf from the start. If he was serious about loving golf, why did he need to lie to Golf until now? If his reason is afraid to tell Golf what really happened, but why did he dare to tell Kevin? Isn't it the same? Du remained silent, pondering what Dylan said. Du, Dylan shouted when Du still didn't understand what he meant by his words. I know, now I'm branded a traitor, but please, this time please believe me. I know all of Mew's plans. When Mew succeeds in marrying Golf, then it's the same. It's the same as you endangering the lives of Golf and Kevin. But if Golf manages to escape without anyone protecting him, then Golf will also be in danger. Many people want Golf when they know that Golf can have a child in her womb because of that. Mew always tries to delay the time to marry Golf. He's waiting for the right time too. Enough, Du said. Dylan, do you think I can trust you? Stop it. If you keep meddling like this, it will only endanger your parents' lives. Let's see how it ends. If your words are true before the ending of their story arrives, I will let you do as you please. Dylan furrowed his brow. You think the time to save Golf is very short? I don't care. I've hidden my family where you can't find them, and I will continue to interfere until I make sure Golf is safe. That's it. I don't intend to have sex with him. I just want to protect Golf and Kevin. Because from the start, when Mew entered his life, Golf's life was at stake. Even if I have to kill Golf to keep Golf safe from your evil plans, then I will do it. Dylan's words left Du speechless. Soon after, Dylan got up from his seat and simply left the room. Du let out a sigh, grinning faintly at Dylan's departure. You think you can save Golf? You're stupid, Dylan. Really stupid. 15.03. Kevin had just finished cleaning himself up after returning from school. Then, Kevin walked out of his room to meet Golf. Kevin knocked on the door. Golf's room for a few minutes. Then, Golf opened the door for Kevin. Golf invited Kevin into his room. Now they were sitting on the sofa in Golf's room. Dad, Kevin called. Yes. Do you need something? Dad, my friend wants to come here. Come here. Is that okay? One person or just one person? His name is Layden. Kevin replied. Perhaps because Kevin's trust in Dylan had faded, Kevin didn't listen to Dylan's warnings. Golf was silent. Golf was confused. Just one person, Papa? He's coming here to do group work with me, Kevin pleaded, shaking Golf's arm. When is your friend coming here? After you let me. Alright, no later than 8 p.m. He has to go home immediately. Thanks, Daddy, Kevin said, hugging Golf tightly. Golf chuckled, stroking Golf's hair. Afterwards, Golf borrowed Golf's cell phone, which Golf had never taken out once. Then Kevin typed Layden's number to call him. A few dozen minutes later, Layden agreed to come to Kevin's house. Now Kevin was waiting for Layden's arrival at the gate of his house, because if not, Mew's bodyguards would definitely chase Layden away. Kevin waited for several dozen minutes and then Layden arrived. From afar, Layden got off the motorbike. It seemed like Layden came here using a motorbike, precisely an online motorcycle taxi. After that, Layden approached Kevin. Then Kevin immediately invited Layden into his house. Until when he arrived inside, Kevin accidentally met his father. Daddy, Kevin said, approaching Golf. Golf smiled at him. Then Kevin looked towards Layden. Layden was unaware of Kevin's gaze. He was still standing there staring blankly at Golf. Unexpectedly, Layden was taller than him, No, that's not what made Layden stare at Gulf. But Layden was a little amazed by Gulf's face. Layden wanted to praise Gulf's handsomeness, but what he saw now was the beauty of the aura of Gulf's face. Kevin patted Layden's shoulder. How he said, making Layden come out of his trance. Kevin exhaled softly. Let me introduce you. This is my daddy. His name is Gulf Kanawut, Kevin said, introducing his father to Layden. Layden extended his hand first before Gulf did. I'm Layden. I already know your name. Kevin often talks about you. You seem nice. Thank you for being my son's friend. Gulf replied after taking Layden's outstretched hand. A few minutes later, Gulf released Layden's outstretched hand. Because it had been more than 2 minutes, Layden still hadn't released his hand. After that, Kevin invited Layden to go into his room, while Gulf went back to the kitchen to continue his cooking. There was a slight stinging sensation when Layden touched his hand earlier. He didn't know what feeling it was, but Gulf's heart felt nervous. His heart was racing. Layden's gaze seemed unfamiliar to him. Gulf felt that Layden's gaze was similar to someone he knew. In Kevin's room, now Layden and Kevin were sitting side by side on Kevin's study chair. The atmosphere was quiet. Kevin was too focused on doing his group work, while Layden, he still wasn't very focused. He didn't know what Layden was thinking, but his brain couldn't focus. Kevin realized this. Layden, Kevin called. Layden turned his head. What are you thinking about? Nothing, Layden replied. Nothing, but why do you look restless? Is something wrong? Layden smiled faintly. Nothing. Don't think about me, just focus on our group work. Okay, if you need anything, just tell me. Layden nodded in understanding. Then after that, Kevin continued to finish his group work. So did Layden. 19.11 at night. 3 hours passed, and now they were still busy working on their group work. A few minutes later, Kevin finished his group work. Done, he said, making Layden turn to him. Are you done? Kevin nodded. Let's have dinner first, okay? But I'm not done yet. It's dinner time. Let's eat first. I'll continue it later, Kevin said, pulling Layden's hand out of his room to the kitchen. Upon arriving in the kitchen, Kevin saw his father, who had finished preparing the food on the table. Kevin approached Gulf, still holding Layden's hand. Honey, finished doing his assignment? Gulf greeted, only focused on Kevin. I'm done, Pa. I'm so hungry. Sit down. You, Kevin said when he realized that Layden was there. Layden bowed to show respect to Gulf. Quickly, Gulf stopped Layden's body from bowing to him. Why are you bowing? Layden stood up straight again, with Gulf's hand still touching his back. To show you respect. No need. Sit down and eat. You must be tired, Gulf said after releasing his grip on Layden's waist. Gulf did that because Layden's gaze was fixed on his waist, making Gulf uncomfortable with the gaze Layden showed. Layden chuckled softly, seeing Gulf avoiding his gaze. Then Layden sat down beside Kevin. Layden smiled slyly. Ignore me? CK, how presumptuous, Layden thought. Kevin sat on the second bench, while Layden sat beside Kevin in the dining room. Now Gulf was preparing food for Kevin and Layden, placing plates filled with food in front of Kevin and Layden's table. Just as Kevin was about to scoop up his food, Layden suddenly said, "Just the three of us?" he said. Gulf and Kevin both turned to him instantly. "Why?" Kevin replied. "Don't you still have one dad?" Gulf was a little surprised to hear Layden's words. "You mean you're waiting for that guy to eat with us?" "Why, I'm used to eating without him," Kevin replied. "Why so? Call your dad now. I want to eat with your family." "Your whole family," Layden said. "No need. I won't eat unless you call your dad to come home," Layden argued. "You've never even eaten with your dad. If he knows I'm being rude, he won't like our friendship. Moreover, no matter what, he's your dad. He must have been wanting for a long time to eat with you or Mr. Gulf? Layden said. Kevin sighed. Then he turned towards Gulf. I want to borrow your phone. Gulf was stunned. He was a little surprised to see Kevin obey what Layden said. You want to call your daddy? Gulf asked to make sure. Yes. Hurry up. Gulf smiled happily. Then Gulf took his phone and then handed it to Kevin. After that, Kevin immediately searched for Mew's phone number to make a phone call. Yeah, babe. What's up? Did something happen? When are you coming home? Huh, Kevin? My daddy has prepared food. And there's also my friend here. But my friend said he can't eat before you come home. So, hurry home. Kevin ended his call. Now Mew, who was on his way to meet his client, suddenly his phone rang. Unexpectedly, Gulf called him, even though it was very rare for Gulf to call him. And when Mew picked up the phone call, what he heard was Kevin's voice. Mew was surprised. This had never happened before. Mew had never heard Kevin's voice over the phone, especially when Kevin told him to come home quickly. Even though it was Kevin's friend's order, it still made Mew a little speechless. Take me home, Mew ordered his driver. What about today's appointment? Just postpone it to tomorrow, Mew replied. Mew smiled to himself, staring out the window as he remembered Kevin's voice on his phone call. Even though it was just a few minutes, Kevin's voice kept ringing in his mind. A few dozen minutes later, Mew had arrived in front of his house. He immediately got out of the car and ran into his house. Upon arriving in the dining room, Mew's smile faded when he saw someone sitting in front of Gulf. You're home. Sit down, Gulf said, making Mew come out of his trance. Mew walked and sat beside Gulf, right in front of Layden. Mew was still staring intensely at Layden, while Layden returned Mew's gaze with a faint smile on his face. He's Layden, my friend. He came here because of group work, Kevin explained. Then Layden extended his hand to Mew. Mew was indifferent. He ignored Layden's outstretched hand. A few minutes without being responded to by Mew, Layden lowered his hand, still trying to smile faintly. Alright, let's eat now, Mew said instead. Soon after, Layden and Kevin continued their meal. At first they started to eat. The atmosphere was still quiet, until Layden opened his voice. He started a small conversation that made their dinner atmosphere more enjoyable, even making Kevin and Gulf laugh happily. Mew was still staring intensely, his eyes alternating between looking at this man who was laughing contentedly in front of him, while Layden was still telling his jokes, swallowing his food while laughing softly as he told his jokes, responded by Kevin as well as Gulf. Even Kevin also replied to the jokes that Layden made. Mew still showed his flat face, biting his own spoon while staring at Layden and Kevin, who were making jokes. Layden laughed freely, his eyes alternating between looking at Kevin, Gulf and Mew, just like what Mew did. Layden added Kevin's side dish, putting the side dish he took on top of Kevin's plate. Mew put his spoon on his own plate when he saw that sight, smiling faintly. Then Mew straightened his body before leaning back on the chair he was sitting on, smiling slyly, his gaze focused on Layden, staring blankly at Layden. Layden was aware of that gaze, then he returned the smile Mew showed. Mew chuckled softly when Layden's smile turned to Gulf's gaze, smiling broadly to return Gulf's gaze, making Mew chuckle softly, biting his own lip, then looking back at that sight that he had never experienced. His feelings were mixed with feelings of anxiety, fighting with feelings of joy in his heart when he saw Gulf and Kevin laughing freely at the jokes that Layden made. On the other hand, Mew had thought, how could Layden make his dinner party more enjoyable like this? A few dozen minutes passed. After finishing dinner, Layden decided to go home immediately. Now only Kevin, Gulf and Mew were still staying in the dining room. Layden, since when have you known him? Mew said. A few weeks ago, Kevin answered. That fast? Huh, that fast he can make you obey his orders? Kevin was silent. He didn't even realize that he was obeying Layden's orders when Layden told him to call Mew. Mew smiled faintly. It's okay if you bring your friend to your house until late like this. But can you ask my permission before that? Ask your permission? What for? Besides, he came here just to do group work. No matter how small the reason, he shouldn't be able to come to your house so quickly. Why don't you just go to his house to do group work? Kevin exhaled softly. Do you have to bring up such a small matter? He's having family problems. That's why he wants to come to my house. I don't know exactly what he's going through, he said. Then Kevin got up from his seat and quickly left the dining room. Gulf stroked Mew's back to ease his anger. Don't be angry, okay? I'm sorry. Mew smiled faintly at him. It's not your fault. Come on, prepare me some warm water. I want to take a bath. Gulf returned the smile. After that, Gulf did what Mew had ordered. A few dozen minutes later, now Gulf was lying on his bed, turning his body to the side. What actually happened? He muttered. Why did he do all this? Which one should I believe? If all this was just a lie from the beginning, why did he have to make me fall in love with him? Babe, suddenly Mew entered Gulf's room. Gulf was startled. He immediately got up from his bed. Yes, do you need my help? Mew's expression looked gloomy. Mew walked towards Gulf, suddenly hugging Gulf tightly, resting his chin on Gulf's shoulder. Is something happening? Is there a problem at the office? Gulf said in confusion. Gulf let Mew hug his body tightly without returning the hug. Mew was speechless. His eyes were closed as if he was too engrossed in the hug. Just tell me if there's a problem. I'll listen to you. I'm sorry because I can't understand you. Mew released the hug to look at Gulf. Do you want to go far with me? I want to take you to a place that's only filled with me. You and Kevin, just the three of us. Gulf was silent for a moment. Go far? What for? Are you trying to escape the problems you're facing? Mew was speechless. You can't handle this problem. What's actually happening? What makes you scared like this? Until you intend to run away. You know, again, I heard your lie from other people's mouths. If you keep quiet and let all this happen just like that, then it's the same as you letting me leave you. I'm sorry, Mew said. Sorry, listen to me until the end. Everything I've done from the beginning is all lies, Gulf said, disappointed. Sorry, from the beginning I approached you because I had another purpose. I'm sorry. I'm late to say it, but I really am very sorry. From the beginning, all this was planned. Sorry, I used you because I needed your trust. That's why I always kept you. If I lose your trust, then I will lose someone who means the most to me. Enough! Gulf shouted hysterically. The pain in the depths of Gulf's heart washed over his feelings again. His eyes were already welling up. His body trembled. He tried not to blink so that his tears wouldn't fall, showing his pain. Is everything I heard? Is it all you're doing? You manipulated all this from the beginning, just for your own selfishness? Even if you did all this for the person who is most precious to you, until you don't think about the people who are victims of your plan. Are you satisfied? Or are you still not satisfied? Is this very enjoyable? Gulf, why did you do all this? Gulf shouted after getting up from his seat. Why me? Why did you deceive me? Gulf, no. Listen to me. Mew also got up from his seat, walking towards Gulf, but Gulf kept walking backwards. With every step, Gulf could no longer hold back his tears. His legs felt stiff. He was crying, trying not to make any sobbing sound. It only tortured his heart more. Is what Dylan said true? Is that the reality? Just to save your lover, you need to trap me like this. Gulf continued, his body still trembling. Dylan? Gulf had met Dylan. It was true. Dylan had once secretly talked to Gulf one-on-one. Want to know what Dylan said? We will go back to the time when Dylan argued with Mew in the toilet of Mew's company. Flashback. The day when Dylan argued with Mew in the toilet of Mew's company. After that fight, Dylan was helped by Do. After that, Dylan just left Do. You know where Dylan went after leaving Mew's office? Dylan went to Mew's house at Mew's residence because Dylan's status was still Mew's friend. Mew's bodyguards let Dylan into his house. Dylan planned to meet Gulf. At that time, Gulf was doing his cooking. Suddenly, Dylan approached him and forcibly pulled Gulf's hand. Walking towards the back warehouse of his house, Dylan even locked the warehouse door. Gulf tried to escape, ignoring Dylan because as far as Gulf knew, Dylan hated him very much, but Dylan didn't let Gulf escape like that. Aren't you curious? How did Kevin know about Mew's secret? Dylan said, making Gulf stand stiffly. Gulf turned around. You mean you? Yes, Dylan said, walking towards Gulf. Why did you tell him? Is it because you hate me that you're trying to incite Kevin? Dylan snorted, chuckling. Hate you? So, all this time you thought I hated you? Gulf shivered a little, because the distance between him and Dylan was very close. Gulf held tightly onto the warehouse door handle, venting his fear. Don't be afraid. Just give me a little time. I want to talk to you alone, Dylan said. After that, Dylan turned his body, stepped forward to give distance from Gulf. What do you know? Dylan turned to him. What I know? Your life has been arranged. You're like in a drama, and you're following the script that has been prepared by the drama's maker. The bad thing is the drama owner is really very detailed in designing his script. Script? Dylan smiled faintly. Now I know why you can like a man. You're so innocent and easily fooled. Your heart is too soft. Not suitable if your partner is a man. Sit down. Let's talk to each other, he said, after sitting on the dusty sofa. Gulf was still silent. Are you waiting for the end of your story? He said again, hesitantly. Gulf walked towards Dylan, sitting right in front of Dylan. You think I hate you maybe because when we met at the army, you thought I wanted to kill you. Dylan chuckled. That's not what I meant. If I didn't act like that, then Mew would easily kidnap you. I was always trying to stall for time so you could escape quickly. But unfortunately, Mew is very detailed in arranging his script. Fighting with Mew, being cruel to you, almost killing the police. But it's still not enough to stall for time. If I could save you at that time, maybe you would have been lost in the script that Mew made. It's not my intention to incite you, but I want to make you believe me. Don't you feel anything strange? From the moment you met Mew, that meeting really aroused Mew's lust. You had sex with him, then you saw a woman who was your own sister, acting as if she was his Mew's lover. Do you think that incident was really unintentional? That was part of his Mew's script. All this started since your mother's death. Your selling plan, meeting Prim, and then you make her your lover. Prim's death, your meeting with Mew, having children, growing feelings of love, you being abandoned by Mew while you were pregnant, meeting him again, Kevin's growth to adulthood, your move to Russia, Layden's presence under the guise of Kevin's friend, even until now. It's all written in Mew's scenario. Gulf was silent. Still don't understand. Still remember when you mugged your lover, stabbed his stomach, took his heart, and you believe he's really dead? Dylan leaned his head closer to Gulf's eyes. Your lover is still alive. The woman you mugged and the heart you took wasn't really his. That woman was just an illusion in your mind, where that incident was really very real, but actually you are in your own illusion. Gulf's eyes widened. Dylan sat back down as before. Your mind is empty. Because of that, someone can easily bring you to the subconscious mind, then create that fantasy, just like you really experienced it in the real world. Mew's third plan succeeded because of your carelessness. You shouldn't be daydreaming. You shouldn't have an empty mind, and you shouldn't really be lost in the grief of your lover's death just because of guilt. Golf was silent, stunned. His eyes glazed over. You mean Prim is still alive? Dylan nodded. Even during your mother's death, Alexander intended to sell you. Do you remember that? Then suddenly Lee came and took you away, saving you from Alexander's threat. Do you think Alexander really did that stupid thing? CK, Mew manipulated everything. It wasn't the werewolf who wanted to get his body, but Mew wanted to buy you. The plan to buy you failed. That's why Mew took this far by sacrificing his own sister, so that he could lure you to come meet him. It wasn't him who met you, but you came to meet him. Golf frowned, staring intensely at Dylan, as if he was really very interested in what Dylan said. You gave your love, your trust, even your sincerity to him, Mew. That's a big mistake. Because from the beginning you should have been aware when you heard Alicia's conversation with Mew that day. Don't worry, darling. I don't have any feelings for him. He's stupid. I'll make him fall in love with me. Do you still want her words? Golf looked down, his mouth slightly open, really very shocked. Even with your innocence, you entered into his plan, ignoring the warning you had heard. Just because he Mew seduced you with his nonsense, falling into his arms, starting to have feelings of love for him. Golf, why did you do all that? Golf was startled when Dylan's voice rose. Dylan took a deep breath. The descendant. Kevin is not the first descendant of Mew's bloodline. Are you stupid? Even a few months before you got pregnant, Alicia got pregnant with his bloodline first. And you can still forgive him that easily? Even when he betrayed you, you could still smile widely. Hug him when he was pretending to be lost in his sorrow. Mew once told you that he wanted to have children only from your womb, right? Have his first offspring in your womb? But actually Kevin is only the second offspring of his bloodline. And again you forgave him, even though it's very clear that it wasn't an accident, but it was deliberate. Dylan bit his own lip, venting his annoyance. Then Dylan showed photos of when Mew met with Alicia, Alexander, Violet, just like the photos Kevin got that day. Did Mew explain about these photos? Golf was silent, looking down at the photos. And you believe that it's just Alex's evil plan to make you misunderstand? Getting more annoyed when he saw Golf keep quiet, Dylan took his laptop. Then he showed the CCTV footage at the same place and day as in the photo, where the photo shows that they knew. Alexander, Alicia, Violet look like they are filming. Where there's a camera, they laughed heartily when the camera was on. They fell silent again and showed serious faces as if they were chatting when the camera was off. There was no forced expression coming from their faces. Golf didn't even see when Mew sent out his troops to save Violet as Mew told Kevin. Dylan closed his laptop as the recording ended. Do you still believe the explanation Mew told you? Dylan said afterwards. Golf was silent, still looking down. His face looked very anxious. Dylan exhaled softly. Layden. Golf turned to him when he heard the name Layden. Do you feel uneasy when you're near him? Golf's eyes widened. How did Dylan know? Dylan smiled slightly. You're pure. Your heart can feel when someone is lying to you. Your heart often shows that uneasy feeling, but you ignore it too much. He's not Layden, but Aliovic disguised as Layden. Huh? Golf said, surprised. Dylan laughed freely when he heard Golf's confused words. Huh? You don't understand? Golf shook his head. Why Lay? I mean Aliovic disguised? Because he wants to warn his daddy, Dylan replied. Mew? Dylan nodded. If you don't run away soon, then Kevin will be in danger. Mew left you. You are in someone's clutches. Someone is threatening you if you don't obey that person. That will happen if you don't try to escape. Mr. Lee, don't trust him too much. I don't understand. You don't have to believe me, believe Mew or anyone else. Because right now what you have to do is take Kevin and run away as soon as possible. Or your second meeting with Aliovic. It will be the night where Mew's scenario runs again. This time don't be easily fooled. There's one more thing I want to tell you, but I can't tell you directly, he said. After that, Dylan handed a piece of paper to Gulf. Take that paper. Don't open it. The paper shows pictures that you've wanted to know for a long time. Open the paper when you're alone. Don't let the CCTV see it. Oh yeah, I just want to remind you. Don't agree if Mew asks you to go. That's it. Thank you for giving me time to chat with you. I hope this isn't the end of our meeting. I hope I can still meet you. I'm leaving. Bless. After Gulf took the paper, suddenly Dylan disappeared from view. Gulf looked right and left but still couldn't find the vampire figure, until finally Gulf decided to get out of the warehouse. Flashback end. Did Dylan meet you? Mew said, staring sharply at Gulf, tilting his head slightly. Gulf was immediately silent. His body felt very stiff. His eyes still hadn't stopped shedding tears. His fear was washing over his feelings. Mew's sharp gaze seemed to say, You met another man. Without my permission. Mew approached Gulf again. Gulf still couldn't move his legs. Help me, Gulf thought, until Mew arrived right in front of his face. Gulf looked down. He was really very scared. He didn't dare return Mew's sharp gaze. What did he say? Mew said, stroking Gulf's hair. Gulf tried to move his head so that Mew's touch would move away from his head. Still not answering my question, he snapped again. Gulf's lips trembled. His sobs started to sound louder. Please save me, Gulf thought. Mew grabbed Gulf's arm tightly. Did he meet you? Answer me, Mew shouted. You killed my mother, Gulf shouted back, ignoring the pain washing over his arm. Gulf dared to stare intensely at Mew. Slowly, Mew released his grip on Gulf's arm. His eyes seemed to be fixed after hearing Gulf scream. Gulf put his arm on top of his own hand after Mew had completely released his grip. A few minutes after the silence, Gulf refocused on Mew, trying to stand up straight. His eyes welled up when that gaze was returned by Mew. He didn't know what he was feeling now, but the hatred that was once gone now returned to Gulf's feelings. While Mew was still silent, staring blankly at Gulf, Gulf's mouth was still trembling, until Gulf spoke in that tremor. Are you really the one who killed my mother?